On the night of March 18, 2026, an Iranian missile slammed into a gas plant on the Persian Gulf. And within hours, every advanced chip factory on Earth started counting down. The target wasn't oil. It wasn't weapons. It was a colorless, odorless gas you've been breathing in trace amounts your entire life. And 33% of the global supply just went offline for the next 5 years. We're talking about helium, and in this video, we're going to follow that gas from a 1925 act of Congress through that missile strike all the way to a deal to mine on the moon. And along the way, we're going to talk about why the US sold off its 100-year strategic reserve of helium exactly 20 months before the war broke out. And the impact of a helium shortage around the world is far greater than you think. I'm Ricky, and this is Too Bit Da Vinci. This video is brought to you by Sierra. To understand how dire the situation could become, we got to figure out what helium actually does. And the answer is almost everything you can't see. Helium is the second lightest element in the universe. An atom so small, it slips through ordinary materials like they're sieves, and the only substance that stays liquid all the way down to absolute zero at normal atmospheric pressure. That last property is the thing that no other material can match, and it's why helium has quietly become the backbone of modern technology. Roughly a quarter of all the helium we produce goes into MRI machines because the superconducting magnets inside a conventional 1.5 Tesla scanner, Tesla being the unit for magnetic field strength, sits in 1,500 to 2,000 liters of liquid helium chilled to about 4 Kelvin, which is negative 269 degrees Celsius, colder than the surface of Pluto. Another 22 to 24% goes into making semiconductors. ASML's $200 million extreme ultraviolet lithography machines, the tools that print transistors onto every iPhone and every NVIDIA AI chip, only work because helium is the only gas transparent enough to let 13.5 nanometer light reach the wafer. Without helium, the entire AI and computing industry comes to a standstill. And there's actually even more, and I think it'll genuinely surprise you. Every cloud data center on Earth runs on helium-filled hard drives because helium is 1/7 the density of air, which lets Western Digital and Seagate stack 7 or more spinning platters inside the same enclosure and run them 20% cooler. NASA's James Webb Telescope keeps its mid-infrared instrument at around 6 Kelvin using a closed-cycle helium cryocooler, the only way to chill an instrument a million miles from Earth. The Large Hadron Collider, which we actually got to tour, we'll have links to that video, holds around 120 tons of liquid helium, making it the largest cryogenic facility on the planet. Saturation divers work hundreds of feet down, breathe helium-oxygen mixtures, because at those depths, the nitrogen in regular air would knock you unconscious. Border port radiation detectors that catch smuggled things like uranium use a rare isotope called helium-3 to sniff out neutrons. And every Falcon 9 rocket SpaceX launches, 165 of them in 2025 alone, relies on helium tanks pressurized to 5,500 psi to push fuel into the engines. Helium isn't optional. It's a load-bearing element here in the 21st century. And as of March 2026, 1/3 of the world's supply is on fire. It all started on March 2nd, when Iranian drones struck Ras Laffan Industrial City, the largest natural gas complex on the planet, on the coast of Qatar. Qatar Energy halted operations within hours. Then on the night of March 18th and into March 19th, a second wave of Iranian missiles found its mark. This time, they hit LNG trains 4 and 6, plus the Pearl GTL facility, the cryogenic units that liquefy natural gas at negative 162 degrees Celsius. Here's the part most people miss. Helium is not produced for helium. It's a byproduct of that liquefaction process. So when the LNG trains go cold and dark, helium production stops automatically. The damage is catastrophic. Supply chains and energy resilience are common themes on this channel, and for good reason. With bigger storms and more frequent power outages, everyone's looking for ways to be prepared. That's why you're going to love our sponsor this week. This is Sierra, a slim, beautiful home backup battery designed to live right where you need power, above the fridge, on your desk, or in your living room. You plug in Sierra into the wall, plug your fridge or whatever else into it, and that's it. No electrician, no installation, no permits. The moment the grid drops, Sierra takes over in under 15 milliseconds, fast enough that your devices won't even notice. It's great if you rent or don't want to pay for an expensive whole home solution. Inside, it's running industrial-grade LFP batteries good for 8,000 charge cycles and a 20-year lifespan, all in roughly 50% less volume than a typical power station. It'll keep your fridge cold for up to 40 hours, your CPAP running for 3 nights, and your Wi-Fi going 4 days. Unlike traditional lead-acid UPS systems that stop working after a few years and only provide a few minutes of runtime to safely shut things off, Sierra is designed to take over until the grid comes back. The Sierra 1000 has 1 kilowatt-hour of storage and outputs 500 watts, while the Sierra 2000 has 2 kilowatt-hours of storage and outputs 1,000. Sierra is always there and always ready, and its beautiful design will blend in anywhere in your house. Check out Sierra using our links in the description for the best deals and be ready this storm season. Huge thanks to Sierra and you. Now back to the show. Qatar Energy CEO has confirmed that 17% of Qatar's LNG export capability, 12.8 million tons per year, is gone, and that the affected trains will take 3 to 5 years to repair. The damaged units originally cost about $26 billion to build. Annual lost revenue is running close to $20 billion. And because Qatar produces roughly a third of the world's helium as a byproduct of these exact units, the global helium market lost 5% of its long-term annual supply in a single night, plus effectively all of Qatar's near-term output. And here's where things get ugly. Liquid helium isn't like oil. You can't put it in a tank and forget about it. It boils off through pressure relief valves in roughly 40 to 48 days. Hundreds of specialized cryogenic shipping containers, each one a multi-million-dollar piece of hardware, were stranded near the Strait of Hormuz when the strikes hit. As the containers sat there, the helium inside them just boiled off into the atmosphere, gone forever. Because helium is so light, it rises straight to the top of the atmosphere and drifts off into space. Phil Kornbluth, who spent 42 years in the helium industry, told CNBC that spot prices jumped 70 to 100% in roughly a week. Chip fabs in Taiwan and Korea are now drawing down inventory faster than new shipments can arrive. The clock is ticking and we're running out. If you're wondering how one of the most strategically critical industrial gases on Earth ended up dependent on a single Persian Gulf choke point, you have to go back exactly 101 years. In 1929, with airships looking like the future of warfare, the United States Congress passed the Helium Act, locking down America's helium under federal control. In 1927, amendments tightened it further. No helium could be exported. By 1929, the Bureau of Mines had built the Cliffside Storage Facility, an underground reservoir 12 miles northwest of Amarillo, Texas, in a geological formation called the Bush Dome, the one place on Earth where helium could be stored long-term at scale. For most of the 20th century, the Cliffside Field was the only working national stockpile of an industrial gas anywhere in the world. By 1995, that reserve held around 32 billion cubic feet of helium, roughly a decade's worth of global demand, and about $1.4 billion in accumulated debt from buying it all up. And this is where the story turns. In 1996, Congress passed the Helium Privatization Act, and President Clinton signed it into law. Its goal: sell off the reserve at a formula price tied to paying down the debt, not to actual market value. For 2 decades, America sold a strategic helium supply at a fraction of its real worth. The National Academies later concluded the formula had sold America's helium far below market value for 2 decades, directly harming critical users from hospitals to chip fabs. The end game came in 2013, when the Helium Stewardship Act delayed the program's auto-termination. And then in January 2024, the GSA opened sealed bids in a public auction for the entire federal helium system. Only 2 qualifying bidders showed up. On June 27, 2024, Messer, a privately held German industrial gas company, closed a purchase for $423 million. They got the entire Cliffside Field, 23 natural gas wells, 38,314 acres of gas interest, the 423-mile crude helium pipeline running through Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, and roughly 1.8 billion cubic feet of stored crude helium. The 100-year American Strategic Helium Reserve sold to a private foreign company for less than the cost of a single B-2 bomber. And now here's the part that makes this even more absurd. In the same window we were auctioning off that reserve, the US was spending a fortune to bring semiconductor manufacturing back home. The CHIPS and Science Act, signed in August 2022, appropriated $52.7 billion in direct subsidies for domestic chip fabrication, and has since triggered more than $500 billion in announced private investment across the supply chain. TSMC alone has now committed $165 billion to a 6 fab complex in Phoenix, Arizona, with the first fab already producing 4nm chips at scale. Intel broke ground on Fab 52 and 62 at its Ocotillo campus outside Phoenix, a $20 billion expansion backed by an additional $7.86 billion in CHIPS Act funding finalized in November 2024. Samsung is finishing a $37 billion plant in Taylor, Texas. Every major chip maker is now moving capacity onto American soil to escape the Taiwan single point of failure problem. And every one of those fabs needs helium. The EUV lithography won't function without it. The wafer cooling won't work without it. The leak detection won't work without it. We spent over $500 billion to escape one single point of failure in our chip supply chain. And during the exact same window, we sold off the one strategic reserve that could have insulated those new fabs from another one. 20 months later, in March 2026, Qatar Energy declared formal force majeure on its long-term LNG contracts. Helium spot prices doubled within a week. And as of today, helium is still not in Project Vault, the new $10 billion US critical mineral stockpile launched in February 2026, which covers lithium, gallium, and cobalt. But somehow not helium, which the trillions of dollars invested in chip fabs can't operate without. The Peterson Institute for International Economics, one of Washington's most influential economic policy shops, has publicly called for rebuilding the reserve. But so far, as of the making of this video, nothing's happened. Now, you might be asking the obvious question: if helium is this precious and this strategically fragile, why don't we just use something else? And the honest answer is, we can't. Not for the things that actually matter. Helium isn't valuable because it's rare. It's valuable because of a quirk of quantum mechanics that no other element shares. At 1 atmosphere of pressure, helium is the only known substance in the universe that stays liquid all the way down to absolute zero. Everything else freezes solid before you get there. Hydrogen, the next lightest gas, freezes at 14 Kelvin. Neon, 24 Kelvin. Nitrogen, oxygen, and argon all freeze in the 50 to 80 Kelvin range. The reason helium doesn't is something physicists call zero-point motion. At low temperatures, helium atoms still vibrate so much that they literally refuse to settle into a solid crystal structure at normal pressure. You'd have to compress helium to about 25 atmospheres before it agrees to freeze. That single fact is why helium has no substitute in cryogenic engineering. You need the ultra-low temperature because every superconducting magnet in modern science runs on it. The niobium titanium magnets in your hospital's MRI need to be below 9.2 Kelvin to superconduct, and in practice they run at 4.2, helium's boiling point. The Large Hadron Collider's main dipole magnets run even colder, at 1.9 Kelvin, because helium below 2.17 Kelvin becomes a superfluid, a state of matter with effectively infinite thermal conductivity and zero viscosity that no other substance can match at any temperature. And ITER, the National Fusion Reactor under construction in France, needs 25 tons of liquid helium to cool 10,000 tons of superconducting magnets. As I was researching this, I genuinely didn't realize how valuable it was. Modern helium-free MRI machines, by the way, like Philips Blue Seal, still use helium. They just seal 7 liters of it inside a closed cryocooler instead of pouring in 1,500. Every pulse tube and Gifford McMahon cryocooler on the market uses helium gas as the working fluid because nothing else stays gaseous at 4 Kelvin without freezing. And I actually just had a call today with a company called Q Energy that's producing Stirling engines, and guess what the working fluid is? Helium. So what is the plan? Right now, there are 3 races running in parallel. First, find more helium in the ground. A company called Gold Hydrogen, drilling on the York Peninsula in South Australia, recorded air-corrected helium purities of 36.9% in October 2024, which may be the highest concentration ever measured at a wellhead. Most commercial helium gets stripped out of natural gas streams containing less than 1% helium. Gold hydrogen's reservoir is more than 30 times richer than that. The problem here is with our current capacity going offline with what's happened with Iran, we're not going to have these new sources online anytime soon, like 2 or 3 years. The second option is reduce demand. Philips, I mentioned, unveiled the Blue Seal Horizon at the Radiological Society of North America conference in November 2025, the world's first helium-free-ish MRI. The company says that its earlier Blue Seal 1.5 Tesla magnet have already saved more than 6 million liters of liquid helium across 2,000 plus installed units. Magnetica, a Brisbane company spun out of the University of Queensland in 2005, is shipping cryogen-free 3 Tesla magnets specifically designed for joint and extremity scanning. The same Australian innovation ecosystem that closed the country's only helium plant in 2023 is now exporting machines that don't need it. Can't make that up. And the third, the part that sounds like science fiction, but actually isn't, is mining the moon. We made a video about this actually a couple of years ago about this crazy idea. But a startup called Interloon has signed a contract with quantum computing manufacturer Bluefors to deliver up to 10,000 liters per year of helium-3, the rare isotope that makes large-scale quantum computing possible, by extracting it through lunar regolith starting in 2028. We now live in an age where we're talking about mining the moon, and where we could have the entire global economy come to a grinding halt because of the supply of one material. But these are the times. So what do you think? Now, I actually hadn't heard just how dire this situation could potentially get. Have you? Sound off in the comments below if you know of other uses for helium that I haven't covered in this video. All right, until next week, I'm Ricky Da Vinci. We'll catch you on the next one.